everyone, Rosie Annette here. Today I'm going to be doing a first impressions and review on the new Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. In this video, I'm also going to compare this palette to the chocolate bar, the semi-sweet chocolate bar, the chocolate bonbons palette, and the peanut butter and jelly palette. I'm going to be comparing quality, colors, value, and a lot more, so let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so first off, the Sweet Peach palette is a limited edition palette from Too Faced. It has 18 colors in the palette total. It is limited edition and it is quite tricky to get your hands on, which is a big downside to this palette. I know it took me a long time to be able to get my hands on it, so if you see this palette and you've been interested in buying it and you manage to see it in stores, just grab it right away because they sell out like within minutes, I hear, of them hitting store shelves. I got mine online at Ulta when it released there. I'm also wearing this palette on my eyes. This is my first time using this palette. I wanted to get this review up for you as quick as possible. I know this palette has gotten mixed reviews, but my first thoughts on it, or it's up to par with all the other chocolate bar palettes if you've ever used any Too Faced shadows. I think these are all very similar. As the same with any palette I have from Too Faced, there's a couple shades that are a little weaker than other shades, but overall, the blendability, the pigmentation, it was really easy to work with for me. I didn't have any problems with it personally. On my eyes today, on the lid, I have Luscious. I have these two peachy shades right here in my crease with a little bit of this shade, which is called Summer Yum, and then this purpley shade right above it and called Peach Pit in my outer V. Just so you guys can kind of get an idea of looks you can do with this palette, I wanted to tell you what I did on my eyes today. Out of the 18 shades in the palette, there are 8 matte shades. The rest are all satiny shimmer shades. I only see 2 shades that have like flecks of glitter in them. And one of them is Candied Peaches, which is right here. And I did put this in my crease today. The glitter does not seem to translate on my lids. And the other one is Talk Derby to Me, which is this darker plummy color in the corner. It seems to have some peachy flecks of glitter in it. I haven't used the shade, so I can't tell you how it transfers on the eyes yet, but I just wanted to let you guys know because I know some people aren't a fan of shades with glitter in them. Talking about the shades in this palette, I'm going to go ahead and swatch them for you now. Okay, we're going to start with this first row right here. We're going to go down the line with White Peach, Nectar, and Peaches and Cream. The next row is Luscious, Cobbler, and Georgia. This one is one of my favorites in the palette. Then we have Just Peachy, Candied Peaches, and Caramelized. Next we have Bless Her Heart, Bellini, and Puree. Now we have Tempting, Peach Pit, and Summer Yum. And in the last row, we have Charmed, I'm Sure, Delectable, and Talk Derby to Me. Here's the whole palette swatched on my arm so you can see all the colors together. Okay, now that you've seen the swatches, let's go ahead and talk about the smell of this palette. It does smell like peaches, but not like real organic, like natural from the earth peaches to me. It smells like those like candied peach O-rings that I used to get as a kid. The smell is really strong. I mean like really strong. It's stronger than the chocolate bar palettes, all of them, and the peanut butter and jelly palette. I had them all sitting open on my desk and I could only smell the peach palette, and even as I was applying it to my eyes, I could smell the peach scent on the brush. So if you are really sensitive to smells, I would say this palette would be a pass for you just because it is a really potent smell. And on a side note, on the internet a bunch of people were saying it tastes like peaches, so I actually tasted the eyeshadow and it does kind of taste like peaches, which is absolutely insane to me, but I obviously wouldn't recommend eating eyeshadow, but just as a fun side note, I just wanted to throw it out there that it does also taste like peaches. So now let's talk about the packaging. It's in this hard tinny case, which is one of my favorite styles for palettes to come in. It is the same size and everything as the chocolate bar palettes are. They line up perfectly. It has like little outlines of peaches, and the ombre from light to dark, just like a peach, is absolutely stunning. I don't mean to blind you, but on the mirror, it does say Sweet Peach Palette right here, or peach. Yeah, it's a Sweet Peach. Has a little peach, which is cute, but in my opinion, I don't ever use mirrors in palettes, but if you do use the mirror in the palette, it makes it kind of awkward because your view is kind of obstructed here in the middle. But all the previous chocolate bar palettes and the bonbon palettes also have like the names written in the mirrors too, so it kind of follows that same pattern. And note, just like all the chocolate bar palettes, it does come with the glamour guide that gives you the eyes, that show you 3 looks you can do with it, and then step-by-step instructions. So if you want some ideas or just are curious about how they recommend using the palette, it does say 3 steps, 3 looks, 3 minutes. As I mentioned before, the Sweet Peach palette has 18 different eyeshadows in it, whereas the original chocolate bar palette, which I'm holding right now, and the semi-sweet palette and the bonbons palette only have 14. So with the Sweet Peach palette, you do get 4 more shades in it. And also, just to reference, in the peanut butter and jelly palette, you only get 9 shades. Both these palettes are limited edition. Price for these palettes are $49 each for all the chocolate bar palettes and the Sweet Peach palette. That does not mean all palettes are created equal, however, and I will get to that in a second. And just so you guys know, the peanut butter and jelly palette is $36. Okay, now let's talk about grams and weight in the products. The Sweet Peach palette is the one that we're going to be referencing every other palette to. This palette has 18 eyeshadows and is a total of 18.0 grams in all of the eyeshadows. So comparing it to the original chocolate bar palette, the original chocolate bar palette has 4 less eyeshadows at 14, but it has 18.9 grams worth of product. So you are getting almost an entire full gram more product in the original chocolate bar palette for the same price as the semi-sweet palette. Okay, now we're going to compare the semi-sweet chocolate bar palette to the Sweet Peach palette so you guys can see the colors and everything as well. The semi-sweet palette, again, has 14 different eyeshadows versus 18, and this one only has 17.7 grams worth of product. So that's 0.3 grams less than the Sweet Peach palette for the same price. Now comparing the Too Faced Chocolate Bonbons palette, which is right here, it has again 14 eyeshadows and it has 18.4 grams worth of products. So you get 0.4 grams more product in the Bonbons palette than the Sweet Peach palette. Last but certainly not least, we're comparing the peanut butter and jelly palette to the Sweet Peach palette. This palette has half the amount of eyeshadows at 9 compared to the Sweet Peach palette. This palette is again $36 as opposed to $49, and it has 11.4 grams worth of product versus 18 grams with the Sweet Peach. So you guys can see the different colors there and see the comparisons. Now I'm going to go ahead and tell you the shades that are really similar between the Peach palette and these other 4 palettes. So the first shade that has some similarities is Luscious, which is right here in the Sweet Peach palette. Luscious is very similar to this shade Marzipan in the original Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette. It is also close to the shade Molasses Chip in the Chocolate Bonbons palette. This is Luscious from the Sweet Peach palette, Marzipan from the original Chocolate Bar palette, and Molasses Chip from the Chocolate Bonbons palette. As you can tell, they are really similar. They're not exactly the same, but I thought it was worth showing you guys. So the next shade that I found a lot of similarities is this shade from the Sweet Peach palette, Caramelized. It is similar to Peanut Butter Cup from the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette. Similar to Frosting, which is right here in the Semi-Sweet Chocolate Bar palette. And it is similar to Hazelnut from the original Chocolate Bar palette, which is right here in this bottom corner. Okay, here they are all swatched side by side. Here we have Caramelized from the Sweet Peach palette, Peanut Butter Cup from the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette, Frosting from the Semi-Sweet Chocolate Bar palette, and Hazelnut from the original Chocolate Bar palette. As you can see, they are very similar. Again, not exactly the same. The next shade with some similarities is this blackish shade right here called Tempting. Tempting is right in between this shade from the Semi-Sweet Chocolate Bar palette called Hot Fudge and this shade here called Licorice. Okay, this is Tempting from the Sweet Peach palette, and this is Hot Fudge from the Semi-Sweet palette and Licorice from the Semi-Sweet palette. Now we're going to go into Charmed I'm Sure from the Sweet Peach palette and Truffled from the Semi-Sweet palette. This is Charmed I'm Sure from the Sweet Peach palette, and this is Truffled from the Semi-Sweet Chocolate Bar palette. As you can tell, Charmed I'm Sure is just a little more cool toned. Now, a lot of people are also really curious about Puree and Summer Yum Yum and some of the shades in the Too Faced Peanut Butter and Jelly palette, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about those. In case you don't know, the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette was inspired by the shade Peanut Butter, which is right here in the Semi-Sweet palette. So the two shades in question that people think are similar are Puree and Summer Yum. Here they are on my hand, Puree and Summer Yum. People are saying they're similar to Peanut Butter and Nuts About You from the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette. This is Puree and Summer Yum Yum from the Sweet Peach palette, and this is Peanut Butter, which is in the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette and the Semi-Sweet palette, and Nuts About You, which is in the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette. As you can tell, they are really similar orangey-ish tones, but they are not exactly the same. Now I'm going to talk about the ingredients. None of these palettes has parabens, sulfates, and phthalates in them. Just if that's something you're concerned about, I wanted to let you know. I also wanted to mention that the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette does not contain peanuts, so if you are allergic, no worries there. Also, all of these eyeshadows contain talc, which I know is a concern to some people, so I thought I would bring it up as well. It doesn't bother me. I love these eyeshadows, so I just thought I'd mention it in case that's something that's on your concern list. Okay, so first impressions overall of the Sweet Peach palette is I absolutely love it. I think it's up to par with all of my other Too Faced palettes, hands down. I love all of these palettes. They are probably my most reach for palettes, obviously except for this one because I just got it yesterday, but you guys know what I mean. I love the pigmentation, the blendability. I don't get a lot of fallout or powder kick up. They last on my eyes all day without creasing. I do use MAC Painterly Paint Pot before applying any of my eyeshadows, just to throw that one out there too. When it comes down to choosing which one you should buy, I think that really all depends on personal preference. It just depends on if you like warm tones, which is like the Semi-Sweet palette or the Peanut Butter palette, cool tones, which is more like of the Bonbons palette. If you're into limited edition things like I am, I love collecting especially eyeshadow palettes, so this was on like my must wish list. If you're sensitive to smells, like the Peach palette, I don't mind the smell of it, but it is again very, very strong and potent. So just all things to keep in mind when buying them. I would recommend seriously every one of these palettes, hands down. I don't think you can go wrong with the Too Faced palette, so that's just my personal review. I hope this video helped you guys out. If you guys have any questions, as always, feel free to leave them down below for me. And I hope you guys are having a good day, night, evening, wherever in the world you are. Please hit subscribe so you don't miss any of my other videos that I post, and I'll talk to you guys in my next one. Bye.